Welcome to the Sargassum podcast, where we learn about the latest ideas and concepts about sargassum. This podcast is funded by the Resilience, Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESMBIT. It's financed under the 11th European Development Fund, EDF, Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESMBIT is being implemented by expertise grants, with primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries. Let's get ready to learn together.
Hello, Jenna.
Good morning. How are you doing, Lynn?
Fine, thank you. I am just waking up like you.
Yeah, how's the baby doing?
She's fine. She's here with me right now. She's the little co-host. In almost
Nice.
the last episode, she has been very behaving very well when I am in the interviews. So if in
Good.
some point you see a hand, it's hers.
We're training her early.
Yes, yes, and she is putting attention. Actually, she watched the screen and she sees who are the guests.
Aw,
Yes, yes. And you,
nice.
how are you?
I'm doing well. We're 7 weeks into my first quarter of my PhD program, and it is a lot, that's for sure. I'm really happy to be here, but excited to get this first quarter done. So in the home stretch.
Yes, Jenna. Well, you got it. You got it, and you have to do it now.
Yeah, thank you.
Today we have two guests that actually I saw them on the Sargassum Champions Course. They were part of the Sargassum Champions Course with Francisca and me, and I am happy to see them and to know what they have to say about sargassum in their OCT islands. And well, I if you let me, Jenna, I will start with the bio. Leslie
Good morning.
Leslie Hickerson, with a sustainable tourism degree, moved to St Maarten for tourism work. As a Nature Foundation volunteer, she engaged in sea turtle and shark tagging and educational programs, joining as outreach and education staff. She managed press releases, social media, website, educational presentations, and more. Now, the foundation's manager, she has been making a positive impact for over the 3 years. Thank you for being
Thanks
here,
so
Leslie.
thanks so much for having me, Evelyn. Morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here, Leslie. And this morning we also have with us Fleur Hermanides with a master's in behavior and cognitive neuroscience, worked as a senior policy advisor in St. Maarten for 5 years. She organized the island's largest volunteer event, SXM DOET, which we're going to get to, for 9 years and concurrently served as project coordinator for Collaborating Foundations for the Dutch Caribbean, SFC, for 8 years. Fleur is currently the president of EPIC, contributing to environmental education, research, advocacy, and conservation efforts on St. Maarten since 2001. Welcome, Fleur.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Well, we always do this question, and I hope that both of you can answer. What is sargassum for Leslie, and what is sargassum for Fleur?
Okay, I will go first. For me, sargassum is an essential part of the marine ecosystem that, due to human impact, has now surpassed the space that our system has for it. So it plays an essential role for lots of marine animals, but due to the rising temperatures and increased nutrients in the water, several islands in the Caribbean, including ours, St. Maarten, now are seeing negative impacts of this vital part of the marine ecosystem.
Yeah, I can add to that in the sense that St. Maarten, as many other islands, but St. Maarten in our case only relies on tourism. We don't have any other industry. And so, with the heavy impact that we have of sargassum fluctuating throughout, because sometimes we have it, sometimes we don't, and sometimes it's in total excess, and sometimes it's just a doable amount. But it wreaks havoc on our tourism industry as well. So in that sense, for our whole economic power for businesses and persons living here, as well as we have a lot of residents that live on the coastline, and one of the bays that is mostly inundated is one that is a residential area. So it does cause a lot of nuisance to quite a bit of the population, also just because we don't have a very proactive approach to protecting our shores. So indeed, it's tipped the scale of being something good and has had a lot of negative consequences here locally as well.
And our next question, you kind of just touched on, Fleur, but if you, Leslie, want to kind of elaborate at all, how St. Maarten is affected. So tourism is affected and local communities are affected. Are there fisheries at all for local people that are affected, or other, a lot of guests tell us there's terrible smells by the beach, and these things are off-gassing toxins, and all sorts of other things are going on as well. So if you want to just kind of elaborate a little bit on how it's affecting St. Maarten, go for it.
Yeah. Yes, for us, both Fleur and I are based on the Dutch side of St. Maarten, because St. Maarten is only 34 square kilometers, but it is split in half, and the southern coastline is Dutch and the northern coastline is French. So on our southern coastline, there are a couple of beaches that, especially this year, were inundated with sargassum for months and months and months. One of those beaches in particular, Point Blanche, is known to accumulate sargassum that is close to a meter deep. And the community living there is highly impacted by the fumes as it decays and lets off those toxic gases. As Fleur said, we don't have a very proactive approach right now on our side of the island, or either side really, on dealing with this issue. So there are irregular removals in place to try to help these communities. Some private business owners and private homeowners have fronted their own personal money to ensure that removal takes place on other beaches. And on the French side, I know there are some very popular tourist beaches. There's a really popular day island to go to called Pinel Island, which sometimes the ferries actually cannot operate and have to cancel their operations for the day to the island. So that impacts the ferry drivers, that impacts everyone that works on the island, because again, we solely rely on tourism. So when these things happen, it's impacting the livelihoods both in a health and safety way and in an economic way for our residents.
Yeah. And we do have some fishing as well, small scale, but Leslie, you would know a little bit more about that, I think, how they're impacted, but it's not as big, except for indeed the ones who are in the Grand Cas area where indeed their boats are stationed there, but then indeed they can't get out of the bay and then they can't go out fishing. But fisheries is quite small scale. It's not as big as it used to be.
Yeah, exactly. On the Dutch side, luckily for the fishermen on that side, the way of the wind direction and the waves is kind of preventing impact for them 90% of the time. And then when the waves and wind directions are a different way than they normally are, then they would have the same issue as the French side, that their boats are unable to launch from small bay areas.
I feel like it's this year was actually the first time that we've had it so much on the Dutch side, actually. It's usually a lot more on the French side, so we have noticed a bit of a shift. And so a lot of areas were also not prepared to do much about it in that sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
right, just based on how the island's position and kind of how it's split in half, you're seeing more than you had previously.
Yeah.
The next question is about turtles. Do you suspect that sargassum is impacting female sea turtles when they want to come to the beach to hatch? And can you tell us what were your observations?
So for me, our nesting beaches have a lot of different negative impacts right now. We have high light pollution, we have bonfires, we have loud noises. So in comparison to the other islands within our like Dutch Caribbean network, we have had two very unsuccessful nesting seasons back to back. In fact, this year I think Statia, which is only uh, 20 miles off the coast, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong about that, Fleur. But they had over 30 nests, and we had less than 5. So it's a very big discrepancy in our nesting activity, and that could be impacted by several different things. Point Blanche Beach has had nesting activity on it before, and when the sargassum can reach, like I said, close to a meter deep, that is definitely impacting the success of female sea turtles to come and lay nests. However, one of the other big impacts for nesting is the hatching process. So we have several times on Guana Bay Beach found hatchlings that have not made it to the ocean and have gotten caught in sargassum on their way out due to the extra energy they have to expend to climb through everything, and they have not survived. They've, not made it to the sea due to that impact. So it kind of impacts them coming and going. And those beaches that are most impacted because they're on the windward side of the island used to be our highest activity beaches. And now we're seeing more activity on beach areas that are highly populated with beach bars, with light pollution, with noise pollution. We're having more activity on those sides. We have not done a sargassum and sea turtle specific research study, so it's kind of anecdotal at this point, but that is an interesting, point to note. And the fact that Statia's nesting beaches, there is one that's very successful that is leeward, so that will not have the sargassum pollution that we have on our normally very active nesting areas.
Yeah, important to note is that Statia has 2 beaches. We have about 37, something like that. So if you see how different that is regarding the amount of nesting success is crazy. But yeah, we have a lot of other negative impacts. So to be able to disentangle which one really has effect, we just have way too much coastal development and stuff as well. So.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. There's already so many threats for sea turtles. You both probably don't know this, but I'm studying to be a sea turtle ecologist. That's what I'm doing my PhD in. So it is unfortunate. The sargassum is really wreaking havoc all over the place on sea turtles of various age cohorts and various stages in their lives. We did have an interview with some people in Curacao who were rescuing these turtles that were trying to come to shore. And it was such a big effort, and it looked like it was just 2 people, trying really hard. And one was a young woman who was really inspiring and energetic. And, they were out there on surfboards, pulling these turtles out of the sargassum. So yeah, it's unfortunately happening in a lot of places. But that's remarkable if you think about just the space per capita that you have so many beaches, and Statia has these 2 beaches and still that much nesting success. So yeah, you can tell there's a big difference there for sure.
Yeah, sadly. Yeah, I remember seeing the mats and mats of sargassum, especially at Curacao, Bonaire, Aruba had it, and I know in some of the bays in Curacao it's been really bad. But I don't think we've ever had it that bad in the sense of that you can really pull out animals out of it that were stuck in it. Only like smaller creatures and stuff that you can find, like smaller fish and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, we never really find huge amounts of bigger animals in it.
Right.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
In St. Maarten, what role does the Nature Foundation play when it comes to sargassum there?
So, the Nature Foundation has been named the management and the scientific authority for the marine and the terrestrial ecosystems by our Ministry of Romy. So, our role right now, because we're not doing an active preventative or research project, is an advisory role to the ministry, because the Ministry of Romy covers infrastructure. They are the ones that do removals in certain areas when it gets very bad. Like I said, there are a lot of private individuals that are doing removals, hotel managers, homeowners, things like that, in the interim. But we do give advice to the government and to these individuals, especially during sea turtle nesting season. If there's a removal, we go and we monitor the beach immediately beforehand to see if there's any nesting activity that they need to avoid with large equipment. We also try to reduce beach degradation with large equipment by giving advice on removal like techniques and logistics. However, what we need to do and what the foundation is looking to do is to do a full like impact and research study to try to see what can be done to manage and mitigate negative impacts with sargassum. However, we're a very small organization. Currently, we have 8 staff, and that means that we have tripled in the last 3 years. So we need to apply for outside project funding and have someone dedicated to that research to do it successfully. We have very much tried to move away from what management organizations have done in the past, which is act without the baseline data, act and try to implement things without doing pilot projects, without doing the research. And we are very focused on having as much information as we can to ensure that we have the highest likelihood of success before acting on issues like this.
Yeah, that's a good approach. I know a lot of times it seems like there's a great solution, and then the sort of repercussions from it in the future are like, oh, these were unseen or not thought of, and especially with large scale removal, you do lose a lot of sand, and that can be a really detrimental thing for an ecosystem and for tourism as well if it's in front of hotels or things like that. Right. So that's a good strategy.
Yeah. Also, just like the likelihood of success, we've seen several islands try to implement mitigation measures that cost, millions of dollars sometimes, and then they're not successful. Because St. Maarten's status as autonomous does not give us direct access to Netherlands funding, I do not want to propose a method that's going to cost $1 million and then be unsuccessful. So that's something that we also try to keep very much in mind for us.
If you can use $1 million for something else that would succeed.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, it's like always the problem in all the Caribbean cities or islands that have sargassum, because many here in Mexico there were many foundings that were not useful, and there were a lot of millions that were waste. So it's a good thing that you are doing this research and that you are worried about doing the most background you have, the most good you will have, or more efficient things you will have to prevent the sargassum from reaching your beach and impacting your environment. And well, about this, I want to ask, does SXM DOET, and I hope I say it well, the Samenwerkende Fondsen, also help St Maarten with tackling the sargassum problem?
Well, so those are more the things that I work for. So one is a funding initiative that is for social projects, and the other is really a volunteer initiative where we stimulate organizations to organize any kind of volunteer effort, and then we help with recruiting volunteers. And this is a yearly event. And there are some projects, but because it's specifically at a certain time, that it generally does fall in line with because it happens on all the Dutch Caribbean islands and in the Netherlands. I do notice that on some of our sister islands, it does coincide with when the sargassum reaches the island, and so they do have some major cleanup efforts then done during that time. So far, we haven't had those happen at the same time by us, so we haven't had any of those types of projects. But I'm also a part of EPIC, which is one of the environment and nature organizations here, who Leslie and I collaborate on a lot of things and talk a lot about a lot of the same issues, and bicker about what we can do better, and how we can try and improve stuff. And the difference is that Nature Foundation does have some staff, and they have from government, they have the authority for certain things. We focus a lot on terrestrial projects, just like with Leslie, they do a lot with the marine park and such like that. So we aren't as directly involved with any kind of sargassum efforts. Mostly more like with volunteering, or I remember many years ago that also we were busy cleaning beaches to try and make sure that more turtles could nest, because that was always an issue. So it's really yeah, we're a small island. We try to do as much as we can with those little resources. So in that sense, we try to make it work.
Yes, I think you complement, your organizations complement, and the knowledge you gain also complement each other. So I am happy to say that we were your that you have new knowledge with the Sargassum Champions Course. So I hope it really solves some of the questions you had about sargassum and all the things it's involved with sargassum.
Yeah, one thing that I noticed on the island is because with Leslie and myself that and our organizations, we try to stay up to date on a lot of the things that happen, and indeed on the research that goes on. And so sometimes you still hear some of the community be like, "Oh, but we should compost it and use it for agriculture," and you're like, "Don't, please," because you can tell like it sounds like an amazing thing to do, but then of course
Yes.
now you know the latest research now that might not be the best thing to do. So yeah, you try to disseminate information, but it's hard to sometimes have the full community understand exactly everything that would be the best way forward for certain things. So that's always an ongoing struggle as well. But a lot of people do have the best intentions with it. So we try to get more of the information out there and that people are aware. And so indeed with some of the things during the course, it was nice to know like certain things that we learned. Also, I had no idea there were so many types of sargassum, and so that was really interesting, and learning out all the little things to look at to try and distinguish them. I was like, wow, that's actually pretty difficult to with some of them, and you guys had spot on eyes like, oh yeah, that's that one and that one. I was like, oh, okay, wow. So no, it was very interesting, and it's nice to get insight from the different islands, and also everyone was at a different field, so everyone experienced it differently as well. So it was nice to get a feel what everyone was doing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. And we, when we're looking into trying to do a successful management or mitigation kind of thing, having that network, I think, is also going to come in very useful for us. And making sure that, I mean, there's always people like in research and management communities that are less likely to share information, but when you have the network established, it really prevents that gatekeeping and trying to start from scratch every time, reinvent the wheel, like that type of thing. We can share information that way and make everybody more successful.
Yes.
Absolutely. In 2021, we interviewed two people, Ilko Leemans and Sven Jensen from Climate Cleanup, and they did a study on St. Maarten, and I'm wondering if the results of their study contributed at all to anything that, could kind of help you on a management level there, if you have access to that data and kind of what that looked like and connecting it actually to the island.
So when they were there, I had actually, I was still working as the outreach and education officer. And so we received their final report, which would definitely be helpful in applying for funding to continue kind of research to address management issues. I don't have access to the data, which would be more helpful. um, but that could be because we've had a management change at the foundation between those two times. I'm sure they were very easy to work with, they were very enthusiastic. So I'm sure if we do find some sort of opportunity to focus work on this, that we will involve them and see if they can kind of help with guidance. We also have a student right now at, I'm going to butcher this and I apologize to the Dutch, Wageningen University.
Wageningen.
Fleur can say that correctly. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. My staff really enjoys it when I have to say that name. Um, there's a student right now working on his master's thesis on sargassum, which we collected some sargassum samples in St. Maarten and dried them for him and then sent to him so that he can do some different pilots on what it could be used for. To be honest, manufacturing with sargassum, I'm as the foundation, we're kind of straying away from that goal because we are not a for-profit company, and access to sargassum, of course, comes and goes, and the amount of sargassum fluctuates. So we are looking more towards like what they were doing in Mexico with the carbon sink, which we learned about in the Sargassum Champions course. That type of opportunity is kind of seems a bit more achievable for our foundation than the manufacturing.
Yes. Yes. Well, you said some things about what you learned and what you took from the Sargassum Champions course this summer, because both of you attended. But would you like to say something else about what you take from the course and how are you using what you learn in your community?
I thought it was very interesting to learn in how innovative a lot of people over the world have been with trying to find a solution to create something positive out of it. So I thought that was really brilliant. Certain things I would never have thought of, that like the bricks, I thought was amazing. I had read about it before, but when we went in more in depth into all the things that people are making out of it, I thought it was amazing. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that people are really trying to think outside the box and trying to really make something positive out of it. So I'm curious how things will progress. I know that we had previously a few initiatives whereby people tried to create stuff. I think more on the French side, right, Wesley? I think.
I think so too, yeah.
But I think I have never heard anything about them anymore. I think none of them survived the pandemic. So yeah, we've had a few rough years. We had the really bad hurricane in 2017, and we had the pandemic right after that. So it's been really hard for a lot of organizations and companies to really survive. And so there were some really cool initiatives that I was hoping that more would come out of it, but maybe with time that there will be someone who can create something out of it, or indeed that there will be some kind of more proactive approach to doing something here locally. But no, I really like learning those kind of things, that and trying to think
Mm-hmm.
outside the box and get to know more about what other initiatives there are.
Yeah. One of the weak points, I would say, for our foundation is also regional cooperation. We're very cooperative within the Dutch Caribbean network. That's because we're part of the Dutch Caribbean Nature Alliance, which is a very large organization which provides a lot of support, both financially and like administratively, to all 6 Dutch Caribbean islands. So we have a very good partnership with the ABC and the SSS islands, but we have not really been successful in branching regional cooperation. There's English islands surrounding us, French islands surrounding us, and a lot of them were participating in the Sargassum Champions Course. So networks like that always lead to better research, more in-depth data, more comprehensive data, and so that's something that I think is a real benefit as well.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that with us.
And SXM DOET will have its 10-year anniversary next year. Yay! Is there anything special planned for the volunteer days for next year for this epic event? Well, not epic,
Yeah,
where
well,
you.
that's the wordplay, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was well, I'm on retirement from them actually, which is actually, well, we're now the supervisory board. We were like the management team, and so the new management team is thinking up a few cool things to do for the 10th anniversary. So they invited us for dinner the other night. That we had a dinner meeting. They know how to make us happy, give us food, and then we'll be there. No, so they have some really nice ideas, and it's always the intention to try and get as much people from the community involved in partaking in supporting NGOs. So that's also any kind of NGOs, and the nature and environmental NGOs are definitely one of them that needs a lot of support. We do have a lot of other NGOs as well, and we do have to say that they are really the ones who keep the island running. They do so much, and we've noticed it after Irma and during the pandemic. The amount of effort they put in to make sure that everyone was safe and had food, and that there is also ways to. We saw that a lot of people were more interested in nature then too. That everyone started going hiking, and so everyone's like, okay, we need to get out of our house. We need to do something. What can we do? So no, there's going to be some fun stuff. I don't know if there's going to be anything sargassum related. It would be good if it's not, because that means that sargassum is not an issue at the moment. So I actually hope we won't have any projects with it. But yeah, so we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Nature Foundation and Epic, we're just gonna keep going and see wherever we can help with these kind of things. So.
That's great. Is there anything we didn't ask you today that you would like to talk on? Maybe, have someone listen to this and be like, I'm going to reach out to them to lend a hand or lend some information or anything that you want to get across that we didn't ask you today?
Good question.
Yeah. Yeah, both Epic and the Nature Foundation are small organizations. And so when there's opportunities, in particular for projects, because of course Epic is focused on project funding. For my organization, only 3 staff out of the 8 are not project funds. So if there's opportunities to collaborate between our organizations, that's always something that we're looking for. We also, I think, it would be nice that the residents and the tourists to St. Maarten know that we do see this issue, and just because we're not acting on it impulsively right away and putting up barriers that are going to get washed away by our heavy winds and things doesn't mean that we don't see it as an issue and that it's not on our strategic planning to address this. It's at the point now where regularly on those tourist social media groups, Facebook groups, things like that, they'll send out messages like which beach doesn't have seaweed today and stuff, because that's the understanding of it. So the community is maybe, I think, not aware of how important this issue is to us, because we have not just jumped the gun and put out something that is going to wash away, So maybe just that we do see it and we're working towards it. We're just really understaffed and we need help.
Yeah, and I think to chime in on that as well is that indeed, because we're small islands and a lot of our region run into the same issues, and anything like maritime or like birds or any kind of projects related to that, we have a lot of the same issues. We'll have the turtles go from one place to the next, birds from one place to the next. We have the same like plastic coastal washing ashore issues. So we're and all the other islands are also quite small, and depending on where they get their funding streams from, they do have some more opportunities. That indeed, these are all issues that we're all working on together. So indeed, we have with our French counterparts, we have with some of our Dutch counterparts, but it is indeed good to stay in the loop with everyone and we do see, like, for example, with a lot more EU projects, EU funding, that there's a lot more focus on collaboration. And so I do see that as a future thing that maybe we can try and do more with, indeed, in with tackling some of these issues that we all run into. I mean, climate change, for example, there's so much that we can still do with that, and we're all running into the same issues. So we are going to be stronger together to do those kind of things. So hopefully in the future we'll be able to get a few more nice projects up and running and try and tackle these things in a positive way.
Yeah, hopefully you'll find some collaborators through this podcast or through the Champions course that you were in, or we are all about building community and sharing resources. And, so if you haven't already, you can kind of like look through the YouTube channel to see if there's anything that kind of sparks an interest or seems like it's related to, reach out to people. We like to hear about connections in the future. We always kind of, if we hear about a guest that we've had that's connected with someone or has had a successful project, we always like to announce it, in another podcast recording episode. So we wish you the best of luck, and it sounds like you're doing the right thing and just kind of making sure you have all the information before you act. And so hopefully the community members will eventually understand and appreciate that more. And I know that's always tough, with community understanding and education. So yeah, well, thank you so much for being here today, both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So if anyone is interested,
Yes,
interns, volunteers, voluntourism, you can find Leslie and I.
Yeah.
We'll always have something for you.
Yeah.
Yes, we will put your links of each of your organizations in the show notes of the episode.
Perfect.
Hi, Jenna. Again.
Hey, Lynn, so what did you think about the interview?
Well, I was very excited to see both of the ex-participants of the Sargassum Champions Course, that they were active in this course also, and now they are trying to do things in each of their organizations to put into practice what they gain about the Sargassum knowledge. Yes.
Yeah, that's really great. It's neat to see that, they're people moving forward after that program and seem like they're enthused to do work. I was really happy to hear that they want to kind of get more data, get more information, try to really get a complete picture before they jumped into spending money and resources on a solution that might not be the best one for them in their situation. So that was really great to hear.
Yes, I agree, and that's how things should be done, I think, before spending money, because so many parts in I think in the Caribbean are spending money in solutions, but they are not really solutions. Instead of doing a better research at the beginning of spending the money. So, well, this is encouraging to all the islands also, or to all the coastal cities that wants to do something about sargassum or regarding sargassum. But they should start with like this, no? Let's see what the scientific field has to say about sargassum, what has been done already, what has been uh, how to say, like, they have solved in other parts with this, but they haven't solved it with this. So to do these kind of differences between the solutions would be good before spending money. Yes, Jenna.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't want to cause more problems than they already have by choosing the solution that, makes things worse on the island for the people there.
Yes.
I'm also excited that they're looking for collaborators. So anybody out there who's listening to this episode, if you are working in St. Maarten or nearby, and you want to work with this group, please feel free to reach out. Their links are in the show notes below. And it sounds like they have some really great education programs there as well. So even if you're interested in that aspect, I think they would appreciate
Yes,
any collaborators.
yes, yes, please. So, well, Jenna, I hope that you have a good week and a good weekend also. And hello to everybody in the Sargassum podcast. And we hope to see you again in the next episode. Bye
Thanks for
bye.
being here and learning with us today.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today and learning with us from our guests. If you want more information about what our guests talked about today, please check our show notes for links and information in our archives. And don't forget to like and share our podcast with your friends.
The Sargassum podcast is made possible through funding by the Resilient Sustainable Energy and Marine Biodiversity Program, RESENBID, financed under the 11th European Development Fund (EDF) Caribbean Overseas Countries and Territories Regional Program. RESENBID is being implemented by Expertise France, with the primary stakeholders being the 12 Caribbean overseas countries and territories. The podcast is produced by Paola Diaz, Mario Garcia Rodriguez, Cleo Maridakis, and Eloise Lopez, and it is hosted by Francisca Elmer, Jenna Contuccio, Florence Menes, Cleo Maridakis, Evelyn Salas, and Paola Diaz. We will be back in 2 weeks with another exciting guest. The music of the podcast is from the song Them I Pray by Drizzle, the Road Runner, an artist from Roatan. Follow him on Spotify or YouTube for more music.